The glass shattered softly on the polished flooring. Its luminescent crimson nectar spread like spilled starlight across the zenith ring's atrium, releasing a sharp, metallic scent that smelled faintly of ozone and old blood. The entire diplomatic corps froze in absolute terror. No one breathed. No one moved. Just stand there and look harmless, Kalen had warned him. That was 40 minutes and one catastrophic breach of interstellar protocol ago. Julian Vance adjusted the stiff, high collar of his formal emissary jacket. The Zenith Ring was built for politics. It was a cathedral of glass and drifting light, currently suffocating under the overlapping hum of a dozen sync grids translating polite lies. Julian hated it. He stood near the edge of the grand atrium, a designated Earth emissary holding a drink he did not trust, practicing his mandated smile. Across the room, the crowd parted, not out of respect, out of pure, unfiltered survival. She stood near the observation windows, framed by the cold void of space. The Solari sovereign, Vailia. Her skin held a faint, luminous warmth, contrasting sharply with the heavy obsidian halo resting on her brow. The crowd maintained a massive, instinctive perimeter around her. No one spoke to her. No one looked at her directly. The air itself seemed to thin in her presence, weighed down by centuries of bloody rumor and enforced isolation. Julian watched the delegates edge away, as if proximity to the Sun Sovereign was a terminal diagnosis. He saw the strict composure in her posture, but beneath that terrifying stillness, he saw something else entirely. Isolation. Crushing, perfectly disciplined isolation. His mandated training offered the only correct response. Keep your distance. File a report. Review the species briefing. His feet moved anyway. He crossed the atrium floor, passing clusters of officials who fell dead silent as he approached. He might have volunteered for something as grandchildren. No, don't think about that now. Just keep walking. Kalen Rost, his security envoy, caught his eye from the buffet line. Her face drained of color. She raised 2 fingers in a frantic, silent emergency signal, begging him to stop. Julian gave her a microscopic shrug. He was already trapped in the gravity of his own choice. The sync grid hum thickened as he breached the invisible perimeter. Vailia turned before he even reached her. Up close, her eyes were a piercing, unreadable amber. They carried the weight of a ruler, calculating the exact cost of his intrusion. Would you like to dance? Julian asked. The station seemed to stop spinning. The silence that followed was absolute. Julian's heart hammered against his ribs. He had just invited the galaxy's most lethal variable into a casual human ritual. Vailia's expression shifted. The terrifying sovereign melted away for a single, microscopic second, replaced by genuine, unpracticed surprise. Yes, she said quietly, her voice bypassing the sync grid entirely. I would. She placed her hand in his. The physical contact sent a visible, terrifying shockwave through the watching crowd. The official summons arrived 12 hours later. It bypassed every established diplomatic channel to appear directly on Julian's personal datapad. The glowing Solari crest simply demanded his presence in her restricted sector. Kalen had spent the entire morning practically vibrating with panic, lecturing him about extraction protocols and political suicide, but Julian had tuned her out. Now he walked the dim, heavily regulated outer passages of the Solari enclave. A mechanical, indifferent hum of a passing service drone drifted through the corridor, contrasting sharply with the chaotic pounding of his own heart. He reviewed his options. Worst case, she uses you as a symbol. Best case is almost more terrifying. He walked past the heavily armed Solari guards whose dark armor absorbed the meager ambient glow of the corridor entirely, stepping across a silent threshold that no Earth emissary had ever willingly crossed without a full security detail and weeks of agonizing bureaucratic negotiations. The heavy doors sealed shut behind him, cutting off the station's sync grid chatter completely. Julian stood in the center of a vast crystal archive. Suspended lanterns cast a warm, flickering light over thousands of crystalline records. Vailio waited near the center, stripped of the imposing formal attire from the gala. "They're calling you my newly claimed property," she said quietly, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Julian kept his posture relaxed, though his muscles burned with tension. "I figured they would. You didn't correct them. Correcting them implies I care about their narrative." She stepped closer, the amber light catching the sharp edges of her features. "I brought you here to change it. I'm tired of every interaction being a measured calculation of power. I want a voice that tells me the truth." Julian studied her face. The crushing isolation he had seen the night before was fully exposed now, stripped of its political utility. "And what do we do about the story they are currently telling?" "We rewrite it." She removed the heavy crown. She placed the obsidian halo onto a nearby stone table with a soft, definitive clink. "Tonight, at the closing ceremony, I will publicly ask you to dance. It becomes mutual, an alliance of equals, not a chain of ownership." Julian let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked at the discarded crown, then back to the woman who had just offered him a genuinely unprotected choice. "Then I accept." He stepped back into the bright, suffocating light of the Zenith Ring's main concourse alone. In his mind, he still saw the obsidian halo resting discarded on the archive table, no longer a weapon of absolute authority, but the heavy burden of a prisoner finally seeking an equal. Then his wrist console flashed blood red with a mandatory, immediate Meridian Council emergency summons. "The galaxy just noticed the board has changed. We'll be here tomorrow to see what move the Council makes next."